Hey folks, how y'all doing today? I'm on my way to the dump with Smudge. Got a couple trash cans from the outside and a bag from the kitchen to haul off. But I'm coming to you today because something has occurred to me. And you know, I've thought about this thing on and off over the years, but it has never been as prevalent or pronounced as it is now. This whole situation with Kavanaugh, you know, I don't claim to know the man, and I've not followed his history or anything like that. Don't know much about him at all, except for what I've seen and heard in the media here recently. But from what I understand, they can't find anything in his past to indicate that he was the type of person that would have done the thing that he's been accused of. Now, again, I'm not declaring guilt or innocence on the man. I don't know. I don't know him well enough to make a judgment call. But typically, when someone is that type of person, you know, the type of person that will do something evil like that, or, you know, it shines through their character. You know, they can cover it up some, they may even be able to cover up most of it a lot of the time, but it's still gonna show through. And from what I understand, this fella, he doesn't have anything in his history to show through like that. But, you know, the thing that I have pondered over the years is, you know, I used to be your typical in the world teenager, 20, 25, and 30-year-old, where, you know, I was seeking after fleshy pleasures without going into more detail. And I'm not talking about drugs, you know. I drank and chased women. So, and thankfully Yahweh has opened my eyes. But during that time, when I used to live for the world, I occasionally had the thought, you know, what happens if I do have an encounter and am later on, after the consensual encounter, am accused of such a thing, which I can't imagine what someone would have to gain from making such a claim, especially against me, you know, because I don't have anything. I'm broke, and, you know, most they could do is send me to prison and take what little I have, which, you know, is mostly junk anyway, at least in most people's eyes. But other than that, you know, I can't imagine what gain anyone would get from such a thing, at least in my case. Now, I understand in Kavanaugh's case it's a political game and stuff like that, but that doesn't change the fact that it was a concern over the years past. I'm not concerned about it as much anymore, because it's my goal to walk for Yahweh, and He will protect me from such things to the best of my knowledge. You know, now there may come a time where something like that comes up and He allows the evil to take place because He's going to use it for His purpose, you know, just like Paul was arrested and whipped and stuff like that, but, you know, it served Yahweh's purpose. So, even now, though, that I'm not chasing skirt and I don't have encounters like that, there's still the possibility that even being in the presence of one, you know, I'll tell you a little story, true story, happened to me personally. years ago, I worked at a company, and there were 2 females that worked at the company as well. Well, those females didn't like me to start with. I don't know why they didn't like me. I don't know what I did to them. It's probably just because I'm different, and people typically don't like what's different. And I'm outspoken, and I tell people what I think, and you know how I feel and stuff like that. So anyway, I'm gonna have to pause here in just a second because I'm pulling into the dump. But I'll finish this story when I come back. Alright, so here I am, back on the road, me and Smudge, heading on to town now. Gonna pick me up a sandwich. Got to go get me some denture adhesive. But anyway, back to my story. These 2 women, they didn't like me at all. And I guess from their perspective, to add insult to injury, they weren't very good at their job. And so my performance, not that I was trying to make anybody look bad, but you know, I was really good at the job that I had been assigned. You know, it was actually working in a factory. So anyway, these 2 girls, they get together and concoct them a story, and they go and talk to the supervisor. And I'm out there on my line, just working right on along, you know, moving the parts through the machine. And so the supervisor comes and gets me, and you know, I tell us, well, you know, can this wait till break time? You know, we're in the middle of a run right now. Oh no, we got somebody else to take care of that. Well, I mean, what's going on? Well, just come with me. Okay, no problem. So the supervisor carries me into one of the little side conference meeting room, break room sorts of things, you know, just off the side of the floor, the factory floor. You know, there were a bunch of empty rooms that had tables and chairs in them. They didn't have any specific purpose or assignment, I don't guess. But anyway, we get in there, and she asked me to sit down, and she sits down, and she goes to telling me, well, such and such says that you grabbed her on the backside, and this other one says that you grabbed her chest. I said, well, I didn't. You know, they're lying. It's not true. And she says, well, there are 2 of them that are telling me this, and do you think that they made it up and there's 2 of them? Well, did both of them come to you at the same time and tell you? Or did they tell you independently of one another? Well, no, they told me at the same time. Okay, well, that right there tells you that they have talked about it before talking to you. And typically, if something like that was to really happen, then they would come to you individually in private, because they would be embarrassed or hurt or something other like that about it, and wouldn't want to let everybody else know that it had happened. You know, at least from my understanding of the psychology of it. I mean, because, you know, I've been inappropriately touched by people in the past, and, you know, it embarrassed me to no end, you know, and I didn't tell anybody. It was actually on a school bus on the way to school one day, and I didn't tell anybody, but someone else told the principal that, you know, the older male student was, you know, being disruptive and ugly and stuff like that. And I was named. Well, actually, I don't think I was named specifically. I think they just came to the classroom and pulled everybody out of class one at a time who was riding the bus on the day in question. But anyway, so I asked this supervisor, I said, so are you gonna fire me? She says, well, just sit here and talk to me for a minute. I said, when all this is done, am I gonna be fired? Well, no, just sit and talk to me a minute. I said, look, answer my question. When you get done with this little conversation, am I going to be fired? Well, the company has a 0 tolerance policy. Okay, so am I going to be fired? Well, because of that policy, yes, you're going to be fired. Okay, well, I got up and walked out. So what had happened was there was a presumption of guilt at the moment that the accusation was made, period. Because I would think a zero tolerance policy would go both ways. You know, you don't tolerate sexual harassment, but you don't tolerate lies about sexual harassment either. Because I didn't do it. I know I didn't do it. So, isn't the two of them getting together and making the accusation against me in and of itself a harassment? It may not be a sexual harassment, but you know, it's a harassment nonetheless. So the supervisor went on, she told me, well, yes, you know, because the company has zero tolerance policy. All right, well, you know, you haven't done any investigation yet. All you've done is they accused me of it, and then you asked me a few questions that in no way incriminated me, or my answers didn't incriminate me. It's just not possible. So that's fine. But you know, all that being said, and I know all things happen for a reason, and it's because of every step that I have taken in my life that has led me to where I am, and thankfully Yahweh has made each one of those steps to lead me to Him. You know, so I'm just as grateful that it happened, because I hated working there to start with. I couldn't stand it. You know, I'm not one to work in a factory. And you know, this was, I think this was after I got out of the Air Force. But anyway, you know, fast forward to today, when you've got men and women that can't decide whether they're men and women, which, you know, biology tells you that, period. And, you know, then you have men like me, you know, virtuous, not trying to toot my own horn. I'm not virtuous because of my own ability and whatnot. I'm virtuous because the Spirit of Yahweh lives through me, and He is my virtue. So, if I'm in a store and I walk past the aisle, unless it's a well-lit store, you know, something like Food Lion or Walmart or something other like that, where it's a wide aisle, it's well-lit and whatnot, I'll walk down an aisle that has a lady in it, you know, if she's by herself. If I need to go down that aisle to get something, I mean, I don't obviously chase them around to look at them, but there are other stores, say like Dollar General, where they cram so much into the store that, you know, a lot of aisles you can't even hardly turn your own self around in, much less walk past someone. And with the aisles being that tightly crammed together, they're not very well lit, and they obviously can't have any camera recording down all the aisles, maybe some of them, but certainly not all of them. So because of the current climate, which is not new, it's been like this for lots of years, I am very guarded in the situations that I will put myself in. Now, the other day I was reading something on Facebook, and it was, well, no, it wasn't on Facebook, it was just an article or something other online, where some professor or speaker at a seminar or something other, he has this whiteboard, and he makes two columns, and one column has men written above it, and the other column has women written above it, okay? And he asked the question, says, okay, you know, men, I only want men to answer this question. You know, and what the question was is, all right, men, what do you do to avoid sexual assault? And nobody raised their hand. Well, you know, one or two raised their hand, and what was said was, I don't really think about it. You know, it's not something that concerns me. Well, then, you know, the speaker, he asked the women, he says, what do you all do to protect yourself against sexual assault and whatnot? So, you know, almost every woman in there raised their hand, you know, and you get answers like, well, you know, one carries mace or pepper spray, and, you know, some of them hold their keys a certain way to use them as a weapon if necessary, and others, you know, have concealed carry license and carry handguns on their person. And, you know, there was a variety of answers. But, you know, the problem is he didn't ask the right questions. I mean, he did. He asked the right question to the women, but he didn't ask the men the important question that they needed to be asked. Men, what do you do to avoid a situation where you could be accused of sexual assault? All right, so what do we do? Well, I've just told you one of the things that I do. I make absolutely certain that there is no way that I can be put in a situation in stores where the accusation could be believed even if it was made. You know, another thing that I do is convenience stores. If I'm out late at night for whatever reason and I pull up to a convenience store and all I can see is a single female attendant, I go to another store, or I don't go to the store at all. You know, because I'm not going to be accused of that if I can help it. You know, so there are lots and lots of things. You know, when I'm standing around talking to a group of people in general, not just women, but men and women both, I make sure that I stand out of arm's reach of those people. You know, I make sure that I stand far enough away that even people walking by who might glance up would notice that I'm pretty far away from them. So, I'm getting ready to step into a store now to get my denture adhesive, and I will pick this up when I come back. All right, folks, I'm back. So another thing I do to ensure that those false accusations can't be made against me is I am certain to know the character of the females that I will put myself around whenever it's possible. For example, you know, I have a lady that in order to get out of the house, she rides different places with me, you know, like when I go to the VA and stuff like that. You know, she'll ride in order to just be able to get out of the house to see some different scenery. But there's all sorts of things that we have to do. And you know, even riding down the road, I stop and help people. So you have to be careful even when you do that, because male, female, whatever, you know, there's all kinds of accusations that can be made against you. But aside from that, you don't know if the person you're stopping to help is a lunatic or not. So, you know, it can be physically dangerous to stop and help people. You know, again, I trust Yahweh to see to my safety, you know, plus He's given me sense enough to be aware and pay attention and stuff like that. Which, you know, I can't see everything, obviously, but you know, there's something else to consider here also. These videos that I make kind of put it right out there in public who I am as a person, and you know what I am and who I believe in and so forth and so on. And scripture says that there will come a time when Yahweh's servants are going to be persecuted, you know, and we're going to be persecuted to no end until Yahweh puts an end to it. So that also is something to consider, because you know, evil doesn't have to have a reason to accuse good except that it's good, you know, except that evil hates good. You know, that's the only reason that evil needs to come against good, to make the false accusations and so forth and so on. So I'm about to get to where I'm gonna pick my lunch up from, so I'm gonna wrap this up. But you know, men and women both, stay safe. Make sure you know who you're dealing with. Don't put yourself in situations that can possibly be compromising, or that even the appearance of compromising can I mean, you know what I'm saying. That didn't phrase very well, but you know, even where scripture says to avoid the appearance of evil, you know. So if there's a situation, you know, you have to put yourself outside of it and look at it and see if it even looks like it could possibly be misconstrued into something that it's not. And it's a shame that the world has come to this, but people just don't have integrity anymore. They don't have any kind of integrity. They don't have personal integrity. They don't have collective integrity. I mean, look at the politicians. You know, the politicians come together as a group to figure out how they can lie to further their agenda, or to gain monetarily from telling their lies and whatnot. So there's just no integrity anymore. But you know, remember Acts 17:10 and 11, 2 Timothy chapter 2 verse 15, Proverbs 18:13, and Proverbs 18:21. You know, and just be safe, be aware of what's going on, know the people that you're dealing with, and by all means, ladies, protect yourselves as best you can. Men, protect the ladies as best you can, at the risk of me being accused of being a sexist because of my desire to protect the weak. But I hope to see you all in the kingdom of heaven. Yahweh bless.